What's up, Packers Nation? Victor here. And I need you locked in right now, because what we're about to talk about could completely reshape this team's identity heading into 2026. This is not a normal offseason. After blowing that 21-3 halftime lead in the wildcard round against the Chicago Bears, after battling injuries all year, after watching a Super Bowl-caliber roster fall apart at the worst possible time, one thing is crystal clear. Green Bay cannot afford to run it back the same way. And now, two explosive storylines are emerging. One involves a former All-Pro free agent who could completely transform this defense overnight. The other? A shocking trade possibility involving a young former first-round pick that could divide this fan base. Let's talk defense first. When Brian Gutekunst traded 2 first-round picks and longtime defensive anchor Kenny Clark to land Micah Parsons, that wasn't a rebuild move. That was a we're-going-for-it move. And when Parsons was healthy, he delivered. Elite pressure rate, constant double teams, and the kind of game-wrecking presence offenses have to scheme around every snap. But here's the uncomfortable truth. The defensive front wasn't dominant enough. Green Bay finished 18th in rushing yards allowed per game in 2025. Not disastrous, but not championship caliber either. And in the playoffs, that middle-of-the-pack run defense showed up at the worst possible time. So now imagine pairing Parsons with one of the best run-defending edge players of the last decade, a 34-year-old former All-Pro. Still productive, still explosive, just 2 seasons removed from an 18-sack year. A veteran who thrives setting the edge, collapsing pockets, and elevating everyone around him. Yes, that possibility is very real this offseason. SpotRack projects his market value around $18 million per year. That's not cheap. But if you believe this window is open right now, sometimes you pay for proven greatness, especially when fixing the run defense is priority number 1. Now here's where it gets even more interesting. While fans have been debating whether a high-priced veteran edge rusher on this roster could be a cap casualty, there's growing buzz that the Packers might instead consider moving a different name. A 24-year-old former first-round pick who still has major upside but hasn't had his breakout season yet. Through 3 seasons, he's played 43 games, recorded 84 total tackles and 5 sacks. The tools are there, the athletic profile is there, the flashes are there. But in the NFL, potential eventually meets business reality. If Green Bay decides it needs veteran stability opposite Parsons, especially early in the season, that young edge defender suddenly becomes a valuable trade chip. And that's the crossroads we're staring at, Packers Nation. Do you double down and bring in a proven All-Pro to create a nightmare defensive duo? Do you move a young first-rounder before his value dips? Or do you gamble on development and hope 2026 is the breakout year? This offseason is going to define Brian Gutekunst's legacy in Green Bay. So if you're a real Packers fan, if you believe this team can bounce back stronger, if you think this defense is one bold move away from being elite, hit that like button. Subscribe to Packers Nation Report, and let's ride together into what could be the most important offseason we've seen in years. Because something big is brewing in Green Bay. And trust me, you're going to want to hear every detail. Packers Nation, we need to talk about something that honestly caught me off guard. Because the Green Bay Packers have just been linked to a surprising trade option before the offseason even officially kicks into high gear. And the name being mentioned? Lucas Van Ness. Yeah, that Lucas Van Ness, a former first-round pick, only 24 years old, still full of potential. So why is his name suddenly popping up in trade conversations? We're breaking down the full situation, the Rashawn Gary factor, what this means for Micah Parsons' recovery, and whether trading Van Ness would be a smart business move or a massive mistake. All right, let's get into this. The context. Why this offseason is huge first. Let's set the stage. The Packers limped into the playoffs last season after battling injuries all year long, and then blew a 21-3 halftime lead in the wildcard round against the Chicago Bears. That one still hurts. When fully healthy, this team looked like a legitimate Super Bowl contender. But consistency? That was the problem. And now, Brian Gutekunst has to fix that, while also navigating a tight salary cap situation, Micah Parsons coming off a torn ACL, big decisions at edge rusher. And that's where this trade rumor starts to make sense. The report. Why Lucas Van Ness is being mentioned. According to Bleacher Report's Alex Ballantyne, Lucas Van Ness could be one of the Packers' top trade assets this offseason. The logic is simple. If Green Bay decides to keep Rashawn Gary, especially to help carry the defense while Parsons recovers, then Van Ness becomes expendable. That's the business side of football, and we all know The NFL is a business. Van Ness production. So far now, let's look at the numbers. Through his first 3 NFL seasons, Van Ness has played in 43 games, recorded 84 total tackles, 5 sacks, 1 forced fumble, 1 fumble recovery, 1 pass defended. For a first-round pick, those numbers are underwhelming. There hasn't been that true breakout season yet. No double-digit sack campaign. No dominant stretch that made you say, okay, this guy is him. But here's the key word, potential. He's still just 24 years old. Edge rushers often take time to develop. We've seen it before. The Rashan Gary and Parsons factor. This situation is deeply connected to 2 players, Rosh and Gary. There have been strong rumors that Gary could be a cap casualty. If the Packers cut him, they create financial flexibility. But if they keep him, then suddenly the depth chart gets crowded. Micah Parsons is coming off a torn ACL suffered in December. There's no guarantee he's 100% ready for Week 1. That means Green Bay needs reliable edge depth early in the season. So here's the dilemma. Keep Gary for stability, develop Van Ness long-term, or trade Van Ness to improve another area of need. That's a tough call. Should the Packers trade Van Ness? As a fan, my instinct says no. You don't give up on a 24-year-old former first-round pass rusher unless you're getting serious draft capital or you're solving a major roster hole. Because let's be honest, we've seen players take off in year 4 before. And imagine if Van Ness breaks out somewhere else? That would hurt. But from a pure business perspective, if Gutekunst believes Gary is more reliable short-term, Parsons will be the long-term alpha, and Van Ness can fetch a day 2 draft pick, then you at least explore it. What this says about Green Bay's mindset. The fact that his name is even being mentioned tells us something important. The Packers are in win-now mode. They're not just sitting back developing. They're evaluating assets. They're considering moves. They're trying to maximize the championship window, and that means tough decisions are coming. Now I want to hear from you, Packers Nation. Would you trade Lucas Van Ness, or do you believe he still has breakout potential? If you could trade him, what would you want in return? Drop your takes in the comments. Let's debate this. Packers Nazio, I've got a question for you now. What if I told you the Packers could pair Micah Parsons with a future Hall of Famer this offseason? What if Green Bay creates the most terrifying edge-rushing duo in the entire NFL? Because there's a former All-Pro about to hit free agency, and he might be the perfect sidekick for Micah Parsons. We're talking about Khalil Mack. Before we break this down, make sure to smash that like button, subscribe to Packers Nation Report, and help us hit our massive goal of 2,000 subscribers. If you want the Packers back in the Super Bowl, this is the place to be. All right, let's talk about why this could actually make sense. The big swing era in Green Bay. When the Packers traded 2 first-round picks and longtime defensive anchor Kenny Clark to land Micah Parsons, that wasn't a rebuilding move. That was a we're-all-in move. You don't trade that kind of capital unless you believe your championship window is wide open. And even though the season ended in disappointment, Parsons was exactly what we hoped for. Dominant, explosive, disruptive. But here's the problem. The rest of the defensive front didn't match that level, especially late in the season. The real issue, run defense. Let's talk numbers. In 2025, the Packers ranked 18th in rushing yards allowed per game. Not terrible, but not championship level either. And in the playoffs, weaknesses like that get exposed fast. Even before Parsons went down with his injury, stopping the run consistently was an issue. If you want to win in January, you have to control the trenches. And that's where Khalil Mack enters the conversation. Why Khalil Mack makes sense. At 34 years old, Mack isn't in his prime anymore. But don't get it twisted. He's still elite at what he does best. For over a decade, Mack has been one of the best run-defending edge rushers in football. And he's not just a run stopper. Let's not forget, multiple double-digit sack seasons. An 18-sack season just 2 years ago. Consistent pressure producer throughout his career, that's production. That's experience. That's playoff-tested leadership. The perfect complement to Parsons. Here's why this pairing makes so much football sense. Micah Parsons thrives in clear pass rush situations. He's explosive, he's fast, he's nearly unblockable when attacking upfield. But sometimes he can be overly aggressive against the run. Now imagine lining him up opposite, Khalil Mack, disciplined, powerful, elite setting the edge. You suddenly have Parsons attacking quarterbacks, Mack controlling the run, interior linemen collapsing the pocket. That's balance. That's versatility. That's nightmare fuel for offensive coordinators. The money question. Now let's talk reality. According to SpotTrack, Mack's market value is projected around $18 million per year. That's not cheap. But here's the key detail. If the Packers move on from Rashawn Gary, they can free up significant cap space. And if you're choosing between paying Gary or paying Mack for short-term elite production, that becomes a real debate. Mack would likely be a 2-year window move. Gary is more long-term. So the question becomes, are the Packers pushing all in right now or staying balanced? Super Bowl window mentality, let's be honest. When you trade for Micah Parsons, when you pay Jordan Love franchise money, when you push the cap to compete, you're not rebuilding. You're chasing a Super Bowl. And sometimes that means adding a veteran who can immediately elevate your weaknesses. The combination of Parsons and Mack would instantly make Green Bay's defensive front one of the most feared in the league. That could be the difference between a divisional round exit and a legitimate Super Bowl run. Risk versus reward. Of course, there's risk. He's 34. Decline can happen quickly at that age. But this isn't about 5 years from now. This is about the next 2. If Mack gives you elite run defense, 8-10 sacks, veteran leadership, playoff reliability, that's worth the investment in a championship window. Now I want to hear from you, Packers Nation. Would you sign Khalil Mack for $18 million per year? Would you rather keep Rashawn Gary? Or should the Packers invest that money somewhere else? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Let's debate this one. If you enjoyed this breakdown, make sure to smash that like button, subscribe to Packers Nation Report, and help us reach 2,000 subscribers. We're building the ultimate community for real Packers fans. This is Victor, and as always, go Pack Go!